All right, Cleveland Browns faithful, welcome back on into the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. We have a final Cleveland Browns 24, Las Vegas Raiders 10. The Cleveland Browns move from 2-8 on the season to 3-8. Funnily enough, beating one of the other teams with the worst record in the National Football League. Lots to talk about here. Interesting enough game. Offensive explosion in the first quarter, if you ask me. 14 points in the first quarter. You're sitting there thinking, this is crazy. This is unprecedented levels of offense from Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Rees and company. Shedeur Sanders obviously getting his first big league start. The rookie running backs looking amazing. Just an all-around good performance from the Cleveland Browns against a not-so-good Las Vegas Raiders team on the road. Myles Garrett and the rest of the defensive line imposing their will the entirety of the game. I think that's the most frustrating thing week in and week out for this Cleveland Browns team, is because this defense is generational. This defense is the type of unit where you look around and you go, this is a defense that could win you a playoff game. That could take you to an AFC championship. Sure. Are there some weaknesses? Yeah, but every defense is going to have some weaknesses. Most defenses are going to have some weaknesses. The defensive line is there. The defensive line is ready. And this is where I think that a lot of people, if you're a normal sports fan, which I think is most people who watch the Cleveland Browns, most people who watch Cleveland sports, you want anybody in any role, for the most part, I would say 99% of players to succeed. There's going to be that 1% of players that, maybe you just really can't stand them and they're on the Browns and okay, you don't want them to succeed. But if you're a faithful Cleveland Browns enjoyer, a diehard, so to say, you want everybody who goes out there to play and put on the uniform, put on the brown and orange. You want them to do good. This is where the whole Gabriel Sanders discussion, when Gabriel was starting, I hoped he did amazing. I wanted him to throw for 3 touchdowns every game, but at the end of the day, you got to call balls and strikes. He just is not that good. Gabriel is not that good from what we've seen. I don't think there's any reason to go back to him, healthy or not, especially after what Shedeur Sanders showed you today. And the crazy part is, he didn't even show you anything that amazing as far as the NFL landscape. Rookie, first career start, young guy. Granted, he has the turnover. Okay, fine. Judy doing BS, a couple of turnovers from the offense, but this team has been so anemic on offense. The creativity has been so lacking. The deep ball has been non-existent for going on years at this point. All of the 2024 season and 10, 11 games of this season, okay? That a couple of deep balls, a couple of evading the pressure, stepping out of the pocket, making a play, that's all Shedeur Sanders needed to do today. He makes one very rookie-like throw, very, just lasering in on one guy, throws the interception, but he has a deep ball to Isaiah Bond. He's got a good pass to Jerry Jeudy, like I said, which was fumbled, which wasn't his fault. He puts up a serviceable stat line. He has a big touchdown pass that was just behind the line of scrimmage. Good execution. You're not going to get on him. Oh, he threw a screen pass and he took it to the house. I mean, good job by the running backs today to score our offense. The craziest part about Kevin Stefanski and how he's been able to win football games is that you don't need a good quarterback performance. You don't need a great quarterback performance. You need an average quarterback performance to win you football games in the Kevin Stefanski system. Now, if you can't get an average quarterback performance, that's on Kevin Stefanski. We've had such a low level of quarterback play since we hired Stefanski, if you really want to think about it. Who has been like a top 5 quarterback in the league in a Browns uniform under Kevin Stefanski? Doesn't exist. And yes, you're saying, oh, okay, that's part of Stefanski's job. That's part of his role. He should be the offensive mind, the quarterback whisperer. There's a whole reason we hired him from Minnesota, whatever it may be. But it's like, you saw this today, and a lot of people are going to get upset, but I already know, and a lot of people are going to get upset when I say stuff like this. But today reminded me of, a Baker Mayfield-like performance from Shedeur in a Browns uniform. Just look at the stat lines. I'm talking years ago. I'm talking when we first hired Kevin Stefanski. That's what it reminded me of. This is old school Kevin Stefanski. This is the type of play today, if you're looking at it in just a one game sample size. I'm not talking about any other game this year. I'm not talking about any other game last year for that matter, that I could think of. And I'm barely talking about 2023 because it was more of a gunslinging Joe Flacco show in 2023 than anything. But these were the type of games in 2020 and around that era of the Browns. This is the quarterback play you needed to win the football game. And you relied on good blocking, and you relied on a defense that had a good performance, great elite performance even, and you relied on the running backs. It's very systematic. It's very formulaic for Stefanski. The good thing is that if you could replicate that, you could go to the playoffs. You could win a playoff game. You could be in the AFC hunt. But the problem is you have such a low margin for error when you set yourself up like this, where you need a 60. Well, maybe you didn't need it today, but if you're playing a team that is anywhere above ass, you need a well-blocked design 60-plus yard screen to Sampson, where, yeah, it's a good play call. The offense does their job as a unit, which you don't see that much this year. How many plays this year from the Cleveland Browns offense are like, oh, all 11 guys really work together on that play? Doesn't really happen. It doesn't really exist. But that was one of them. So Shedeur Sanders' first touchdown in the NFL, which was a long touchdown, goes to Dylan Sampson on a screen pass. How many times did you see that in the old days of this regime where Chubb is standing out there and has all this space, and we got wide receivers and we got offensive linemen downfield blocking. Kareem Hunt, same way. It's Kevin Stefanski's bread and butter is make sure you don't do anything too stupid on offense. Make sure you don't turn the ball over at an apex point in the game. You can't have these big momentum swing turnovers. At least Shedeur's turnover today was not that. He gets a check for that. And hopefully you have a good defensive performance and you don't do anything stupid anywhere else. I understand what Kevin Stefanski is trying to get at as far as a winning formula. It's just when your roster is not talented or your roster isn't coached up to the absolute screws, it doesn't work. And that's a lot of head coaches winning formulas. It has to be. The NFL, National Football League, it's a tough place to win. But at the end of the day, I'm happy that the Browns got the win. This was a morale, needed win. You saw some body language. You saw some facial expressions on the sideline that you haven't seen with this team in literally weeks on end since the Dolphins game, if not sooner. But Shedeur Sanders, 11 for 20, 209 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. I mean, he has 11 completions. This is the thing. And this is why I think it's so valid for Browns fans to be screaming at the television, sitting on their couch, or yelling at the heavens. Like, all things considered, please take into effect all things considered. Obviously, this is a 2-8 Raiders team that is coached by, a geriatric Pete Carroll, who has no idea what he's doing, with one of the worst offense in the modern NFL, mind you. No disrespect to Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's an all-timer head coach in the grand scheme of things, but in the modern NFL, no idea what he's doing. With one of the worst offensive lines. I thought the Browns offensive line was bad. That Raiders offensive line the Browns offensive line looked like a bunch of all pros today. And granted, you got a tall task. You got a tall order with Mason Graham, with Myles Garrett, with Isaiah McGuire, with Carson Schlesinger. You got a tall task, not to mention Alex Wright not even suiting up for this game. Mike Hall, you got a tall task. I understand that. You got probably the best defensive line in the NFL, and they're in a team that is 2-8, 3-8. Disgusting. Myles Garrett is going to chase down the sack record, we hope. Disgusting. That this team is 3-8, and we're looking here talking about mock drafts, and the competent incompetence is amazing. Like, you should have multiple award winners this year, not even close. You should have Defensive Player of the Year Myles Garrett breaking the sack record. You should have Defensive Rookie of the Year Carson Schlesinger flying all over the field, in on every single tackle, it feels like. If you had a competent offensive line, Judkins would be in the race for Offensive Rookie in the Year. It's not going to be, but if you had an offensive line that had one guy under 30 or one guy who didn't have 19 knee surgeries, you got all this talent on this roster, somehow, both sides of the football, believe it or not, and you're just still one of the worst teams in the league. Absolutely disgusting. So I appreciate everybody trying hard today, but back to the original point. Your quarterback, rookie, completes 11 passes and you put up one of your best offensive days of the whole season. Imagine if this team had great to elite quarterback play. 28-31, 4 touchdowns. Some of these stat lines you see, 35 of 40, 3 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. We would score 60 points. We would beat teams by 40 points every week. You get 11 completions today and they score 24 points. How many other games have we scored 24 more points this year? Anybody have any guesses? I certainly do. 16 against the Bengals, 17 against the Ravens, 13 against the Packers, 10 against the Lions, 17 against the Vikings, 9 against the Steelers, 31 against the Dolphins, 13 against the Patriots, 20 against the Jets, 16 against the Ravens, and 24 against the Raiders. We've scored more than 24 points one time this year, and it was against the Dolphins, where we had 1 defensive touchdown and we had an interception that should have been a pick 6, and he got tackled on I believe it was Delpit, and he got tackled, or somebody, it was Hickman, he got tackled on the 2-yard line. 2 games with 24 or more points. Absolutely disgusting. Let's check in on the chat. If you're here, whatever platform you're at, I appreciate you. Hit that like button. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're doing all the good things. I appreciate over 100 people being here in the chat right now. Shedeur had an amazing game today against terrible Raiders. Amazing is, I understand your sentiment. You're excited. It might be a little on the emotional side. Amazing is probably a little bit too far. He did his job, though. And you haven't been able to say that about anybody all year, really. Flacco never really did his job. Gabriel never really did his job. Can't throw the football. The thing is, today you saw passes from Shedeur that you haven't seen from a quarterback, on the Browns make that pass all year long. Okay? That's all you needed to see. He actually tries to push the ball downfield. He did not play amazing. He did not play great today. He was average, below average stat line. Did a good job. Didn't have, had a turnover, but it wasn't stupid. Cavs are up by 7. We're monitoring the Cavs. The Cavs content has been kind of hit or miss here, and I do apologize for that, because I do love covering the Cavs. It's a lot of nonsense surrounding the Cavs, because the regular season, people are up in arms. You see people switching sides, and I like watching the Cavs in the regular season. The regular season, the NBA is so soulless. It's so meaningless. We're going to get back to covering the Cavs, though, because there are some thoughts I want to get off my chest about them, and it's not what you think. Let's go. Did anybody see me at halftime? Ashton, were you at the game? No way. Shout out to Ashton in the house. I should have went to this game. This would have been a sick game to go to. Even if they were, I still would have been pissed, because 2-8, would have been a lot going out to Vegas for 2-8, going from East Coast to West Coast. Game is Saturday. Yes, it is. Big game on Saturday for the Buckeyes. Miles is a freak. Best player ever. Best defensive end ever. Best edge rusher ever. I'm planting the flag. You could pick whoever you want on the ancillary. Reggie White, or if you want to say TJ Watt. I think you're wrong. I think Myles Garrett is the best. I think he's the best pass rusher ever. Personally, guy's a stud. He's a beast. He's unstoppable. And we don't even have the lead in all these, a lot of these games this year. And the broadcast keeps highlighting it. It's like, you got to think about this. How is he doing all this? And how does he have all these recorded sacks? We don't even have the lead in any of these games. Once again, imagine how many sacks he had if we had the lead. He probably would be at the sack record by now. 12 weeks into the year. 13 weeks, whatever week we're on. I couldn't even tell you, because the team's terrible. And, I hear more Ty Simpson and Lenora Sellers and Dante Moore talk than anything else. Even though I should be hearing about, we're jockeying for competition in the division. That's what we should be hearing about, because this division sucks. This division is terrible. You got another year of injured Joe Burrow. You got old Joe Flacco doing BS down there per the usual. Whoa, remember when everyone said, that was a clown trade, and that was a terrible trade. Yeah, okay, whatever. Don't care. Give them all the good wide receivers in the world. Still doing stupid shit with the football. All respect to Joe. Love Joe. Love what he did for, on that magical run in the fall and winter of 23. Don't get me wrong. You got the Ravens, who no other sports franchise in the world, nobody else, no. 1-5. 1-5. Let's do some research while we're live. What percent chance do you have? What percent chance does an NFL team have to make the playoffs starting 1-5. We're going to do some math. We're going to do some math here. An NFL team has a very low chance of making the playoffs at 1-5. This doesn't happen to any other sports franchise in the world besides these stupid fools from Baltimore. It just doesn't exist. Oh, does anybody have any guesses? What do you think? What do you think the percent chance is that you make the playoffs in the NFL starting 1-5? Anybody have any guesses? 1.1%. And now they're 6-5 at the top of the division. Woo! Nothing, God forbid, Lamar. All right, he's okay. I'm over it. I'm going to stop. And then the Steelers, we know they're frauds. We know that they're 9-8, 8-9. They might not even make the playoffs this year. Usually they make the playoffs and lose in the first round. They might be a step down, missing the playoffs with all these teams in the hunt. Because you know why? A lot of these teams in the hunt usually are winning their division. The other teams aren't that good. Like they're in the hunt right now with Houston and Kansas City. Oh, okay. I would probably take Houston and Kansas City over both of them over the Steelers, even if Houston lined up there with Davis Mills, because at least Houston has a pretty good defense, at least from what I saw on Thursday Night Football. Looked good. Looked like they were flying all over the place. And as soon as Rodgers gets in a hissy fit, going to be over for them. And then you got our dumbasses at the bottom somehow. So you should be competing for winning the division, in my opinion. This was the year, regardless of your quarterback play. And people go, oh, well, what's really the point of being in the playoffs and losing in the first round when you could just, you could get it. We got 2 first-round picks next year, and, we got, okay, that's franchises that are good and competent and have a nice, long and tenured history of winning. They can say that. You don't get the playoffs that often when you're a Cleveland Browns fan. So we're not allowed to talk like that, in my opinion. And of course, the Jaguars win today. But that's the thing, going back to Shedeur and hoping that he plays well. And if you're a Shedeur fan, if you're not a Shedeur fan, I think 99% of Browns fans are rooting for Shedeur Sanders to be great and play well. It's just that they don't like the people on the other side that haven't shut up about him all year when he's been the 3rd string quarterback and he was drafted in the 5th round. That's my assessment of the situation, wherever you fall. But imagine the situation if Shedeur shows you enough life the rest of the season here, these next handful of games. And yes, it'll be controversial either way. But imagine you could go into next year's draft with 2 premium first-round picks, one of them being very high, one of them being in the top 5, top 10 easily, top 5 most likely, and you didn't need to use one of them on a quarterback. Imagine you could go Carnell Tate, and then you could go best tackle available with the Jaguars pick. And then you have more draft capital on the back end. And you could maneuver through free agency. The only thing holding you back next year, if that's the reality, is that you're paying Deshaun Watson $81 million in dead cap hit or whatever it may be, whatever the financials are. That is really your only dark, storm hanging cloud next year. If Shedeur could show you enough but here's the thing. And this is why I have no confidence in this stupid ass franchise and this front office and this ownership group, because Shedeur has to play a certain way, however he plays. Somebody in leadership, somebody with a mouthpiece, somebody has to come to the podium and say, look, option 1, we are going into next season with Shedeur Sanders tentatively as our quarterback 1. That's option number 1. Or option number 2, you come to the podium and say, we are going to draft a quarterback. What is the percent chance that less than 1.1%, that anybody in this organization is going to say that? You want to know why? Because they're a bunch of fence sitters. They always have been. They're going to politic you around. They're going to it's like a bunch of politics. You ask them a question, they don't answer it. Deflect, swerve, this and that. It's like talking to a wall. Like when Mary Kay Cabot and all the other Browns reporters go in there, they might as well just talk to the podium and the mic and nobody will be there. Whether it's Kevin Stefanski, whether it's Andrew Barry, whether it's Jimmy and Dee Haslam, whether it's their purebred dog up at the microphone, whether it's Bubba Ventrone, he's a future head coach. I would love to know what drunk general manager is going to hire Bubba Ventrone as their next head coach. Some idiotic fool, in my opinion. But that's where we're at, and they're not going to say any of that. But imagine Sanders gives you the leeway. He gives you the permission to say, hey, we're going to start this guy next year. Maybe we don't love Ty Simpson. Maybe we don't love Lenora Sellers. Maybe we don't want every Oregon quarterback ever, Dante Moore. Dylan Gabriel. How'd that go for you this year? Undersized, left-handed, can't push the football down the field. Now he has a concussion. We obviously wish him well. Just imagine what the Browns' record would be today if they had started with using the talent earlier in the season. I mean, you can't play, hindsight. Hindsight looks good in 2020. I always kind of thought this year was going to be wasted, especially when they tried to sell us a bag of goods that Joe Flacco was always their number one option, because I knew in the offseason that was false. I knew that they actually really wanted Pickett, and then Pickett got hurt and it kind of derailed their whole plans. And they can't run next offseason with the quarterbacks like they did this year. That's kind of my whole point of the situation, is you can't roll into training camp every year of my life since 1999, and it's like, oh, nobody knows who the quarterback's going to be. If you want to look back on the Baker Mayfield situation, the biggest positive he brought this to the team, besides the playoff win, which we're obviously all going to be grateful for and you're going to look fondly on, no one's going to discredit that, but the biggest positive he brought is that the years he was here, at least in the offseason, you knew he was going to be the starter. You knew he was going to be the week one starter. When's the last time that's been the case? Years. And you can't do this where it's like, oh my God, okay, so what's next season? What's next offseason look like? Before the draft, Gabriel, Sanders, they're not going to say who they like better on a depth chart. Watson's in the mix. It's actually even worse this upcoming offseason, if you think about it. This year it went Pickett, Flacco, Gabriel, Sanders. Now Watson is traveling with the team. Watson's all the way down here in this year's equation. Okay, what would that be? That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He would be the fifth in this year's equation. Kind of out of sight, out of mind. Oh, he's been mentoring Shedeur all week. Why? Who's allowing this? Who in the building, Bria, is allowing that to happen? That's my question. But this upcoming offseason, he's going to be third. So let's say you got Sanders, Gabriel, Watson's going to be your third, and then, here's all this wiggle room down here about who they're going to draft. They can't have it again. They simply can't. It's too much. It's too much uncertainty headed into the year, and I don't know. If you're not in love with any of these guys at the top, all these names that were listed, Mendoza, for example, probably going to be the first one off the board. If you're not in love with any of these guys, Ty Simpson, Dante Moore, they always, you want to know my favorite, and when I mean favorite, sarcastically, I mean my least favorite qualifier of a quarterback in college. He throws such a beautiful ball. Oh, man. That the ball just comes out of his hand so smoothly. I would hope so. If you're a top 5 pick, I would hope he throws a good ball. You know who else allegedly throws a good ball and had a really high completion percentage in college? Shedeur Sanders, and he went in the 5th round. So it's like, spare me with, oh my gosh, he throws that's such a dime. I've seen plenty of dimes and plenty of pro days skyrocket someone's draft stock, and they absolutely sucked in the league. Zach Wilson being the first person to come to mind. What about Malik Willis? You ever heard of him? You remember him? Probably not. I've seen a bunch of these guys. They have their independent pro days. The general managers are on the they're in the scouting booth, literally drooling, salivating over some of these guys. And guess what? They turn up in the league and they're terrible. Happens every year. Almost every year, especially, and this year, it's even starting actually a year earlier. Think about this year with your Arch Mannings of the world and your Drew Allers. I mean, come on. Arch Manning looks like he can't even run a practice squad in the NFL, for being honest, let alone start. So, save me with all that. He throws, Justin Harold, what's up? We've seen Stefanski win regular season games with this QB play. What about the playoffs? Well, if he's in the basement, put him in the basement and you win playoff games. You know that better than anybody. Apparently, Alex Van Pelt had no problem winning football games in the playoffs. Apparently not, And then we all kind of chalk it up. We kind of flip the coin Flacco, he's just a little reckless with the football, and Houston destroys us in 2023. The scariest thing, I think Russell Wilson was their first option. Ashton, you want to know the funniest part? And it's so funny you say this, because the more this season goes along, the more nervous that I think that this is the route they're actually going to try to go next year. But I don't think they should do it this year. But imagine if we would have signed Rodgers this year, what type of situation we would be in. Whatever you think about the behind the scenes. Oh, he didn't want to come to us, blah, blah, blah. He only ever wanted to play with the Steelers. And I don't know. You can't really, it's apples to oranges because maybe Pittsburgh is doing a better job of keeping him upright. And the offensive line has been so bad, even with some of our younger guys keeping them up. But you kind of saw it today a little bit, granted against a Raiders team that isn't very good. But if Sanders could make one guy miss or move the pocket a little bit laterally, there were big plays down the field, broken or scripted or whatever. Like, imagine if Aaron Rodgers was our starter all year long. And I didn't think Aaron Rodgers was going to have a good year at all. And granted, is he really playing at a really, really high level? He's really not. But he's doing enough with that, the Tomlin culture where their defense gets a couple of turnovers and plays at a level that's lower than our defense, and they win football games. Now, granted, like I said, they're not going to make any noise this year. They're 6-5 all of a sudden after they started off so good. But like, is this front office going to convince themselves again that we need like a journeyman quarterback who could just play average football? I don't know. I think they'll put Deshaun Watson out there before they do that. But that's kind of my opinion. Is there any quarterback like that in the league? Like, are you going to, like, what's Jacoby Brissett situation like that? I just don't even want to think about that. That's giving me a headache. But the more I think about it, Ashton, yeah, maybe Wilson was their number one option this offseason. You never know. You never know about these internal discussions. I mean, I know a little bit, small things here and there. But I never seen anything. I never got anything sent to me explicitly that had Russell Wilson involved. A couple of things with the running backs, more or less. And another thing, Jerome Ford, why is he still on the roster? I mean, maybe you called every general manager in the league and nobody even wanted to give you a 6th or 7th round pick for him, but that guy's cooked. Sampson, Judkins, both studs, both real players in my opinion. Sampson just doesn't get as many touches. G Good 7617. I hope that Shedeur becomes a free agent. The Browns coaches are not a good fit for him. I mean, he ain't becoming a free agent anytime soon. So we're going to keep, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. All right, guys. Well, that's going to probably do it for me here. Browns win 24-10. I appreciate you coming along for the rant and the venting session at the end of this win. Rookie quarterbacks, what was it? 26, 27 straight games on the broadcast. Rookie quarterbacks for the Cleveland Browns do not win their first game. They don't win their first start. Historically, they don't. So if you want to give kudos and you want to give, a commend to Shedeur Sanders, that's a huge accomplishment, regardless of who you're playing, because it just doesn't happen in this city. It just doesn't happen when you put on the orange and brown and the white. It just doesn't happen. So shout out to Shedeur for getting the win today. Dion in the house, everybody excited. You could tell Myles Garrett was excited. Seemed like he was playing with even a more renewed sense of energy than even before, which is almost impossible and tough to say because he's been so good all year. But a lot of times it's the intangible of the quarterback and it's the layer of hope that goes a long way. And I'm not saying that that's all Shedeur could be, and I'm not saying that's what he was today, but it's like, hey, when Dylan Gabriel is repeatedly throwing before the sticks on a third down, or he's, it just seems like there's no chance that this offense could generate anything. That's just so depleting, just takes the air out of a whole team, a whole roster, a whole locker room. Best toilet bowl NFL style for 2025. Hey, we beat the toilet bowl allegations, probably won't get the first overall pick because we won this game, but I'll take it for Shedeur Sanders' first start in the National Football League. All right, guys. Appreciate you all being here. Hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure you're following. Make sure you share this with a couple of your friends. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Appreciate you being the pulse of it all. Peace.